Okay. Itamixistiko. Good day. It is somewhere around 4 o'clock in the PM on Cinco de Mayo 2024. Sunday, Cinco de Mayo. And we are in the very tail end, the last little wisp of the lunar cycle, Matsi Kapiseki, some the frog moon, shifting into Apis Tishkitsatos, the flower moon. And this evening, I just need to put in some kilometers. I felt like I needed to take a walk, even though I've already walked a little bit today. What did I accomplish this weekend compared to what I thought I was going to accomplish? Let's see. Well, I was going to go install the raccoon barrier, which I did, showed in the last video. I was going to perhaps install the snake shielding. Never got to that. Yesterday was fairly busy. I did 2 different Jane's walks, and they were spaced right kind of in the middles of the day. So like I did one over this way in, what is it called? Dairy Station. And I took a whole neighborhood group on a walk for an hour, and they had a microphone with a speaker in a wagon that they pulled along so I could talk to the whole group as we walked along. They just wanted to know about rattlesnake stuff, so I did about an hour-long rattlesnake presentation as we walked around the neighborhood. And then that was from 11 to 12 or so. And then earlier in the day I had walked the dogs, right in the morning, and then gone on and did that Jane's walk, and then went across the river for another Jane's walk at 4:45. It was a bike ride that was focused on water because we are facing a drought condition this summer, and so they did a special Jane's bike ride with several stops to discuss aspects of the city's water conservation plan and strategy and plan and this kind of stuff, and ended with me at the infrastructure for the city's water intake, the University Weir, and a discussion about beavers and the differences between beaver dams and our weir here in Lethbridge, for instance, and what happens when a beaver dams things up compared to how we do it. And I did a little bit of discussion about Portugal and Tamara and how they had built these catchment ponds all down their valley that totally has changed their access to water and their ability to use that water in their irrigation of their farming and all of this kind of stuff. So anyway, I had a real busy day yesterday, and there wasn't really a good chunk of 4 or 5 hours that I could commit to the rattlesnake fence. And then this morning, the Métis Nation hired me to do a bird walk that was supposed to start at 9 o'clock and run for 2 hours. But it really got rolling about 9:30, and it ran till I think about noonish, something like that, noon, 12:30, something like that. And then I was starving. So in Cinco de Mayo, I came up here to this Quesada restaurant and bought a burrito. They sell pretty good burritos that are about $10, like a regular burrito, which totally filled me up. It was $10, and it was hot. It was good stuff. But yeah, I ate, and then I was so full and stuff, I sat down and was watching a couple of things on TV, and then I started kind of nodding off on my couch, and I decided, well, fuck, I'm just gonna lay down and take a nap. So I did. Slept for like an hour or something, and you know, pretty soon it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon and I haven't got to that snake fence stuff. And I don't know that I will get to it tomorrow or Tuesday either. I have tentative plans to go up to the mountains tomorrow, and we'll see if it comes about. But this one will surprise you if it happens. I have tentative plans to run up to the mountains, perhaps tomorrow with Chelsea, and reconnect with her a little bit. And she's going through a really tough period right now. I'm not going to talk about it. It's her family's business, but they're going through a trauma, and Chelsea was saying she might want to visit and run to the mountains tomorrow. So I blocked off my day tomorrow to perhaps go to the mountains, perhaps even stay up there overnight, and then get to the rattlesnake fencing on Wednesday. So today I'm just taking a little walk, and I want to respond to a question that I got on my first little memoirs bit on YouTube the other day. So I got a question from, I'm not even gonna, I don't even know what the acronym or what this is. It's just a stream of user with a stream of letters and stuff. I've never tried to remember it or try to decode it or anything, if it is coded. But anyway, got a question. If you're Blackfoot, then why did you say in your last video that some Blackfoot people are racist toward you? Are you able to officially prove that you're Blackfoot with documentation, or have you ever tried doing genetic testing? Also, what exactly makes someone Blackfoot, or any ethnicity for that matter? Do you have to have genetics, knowledge of culture, or both? For example, who would be considered more Chinese? A white guy born and raised in China who has deep understanding and interest in the Chinese history and culture and who can fluently speak both Mandarin and Cantonese? Or a genetically Chinese guy who was born and raised in Nebraska, who's never gone to China, who can't speak the language, who has no interest whatsoever in learning about Chinese culture or learning to speak the language, and whose favorite foods are Hot Pockets and Coca-Cola? So, I have a lot to say about these things, and I figured this evening I would take a walk and I'd share some of what I had to say. So that's what we're gonna do. Alright, so in that initial memoirs video, I broke down what I understand the kind of ethnic, genetic makeup of my family to be predominantly. On my dad's side, it's all British Isles. So Hancock was the name that came from that side of the family. That was my last name when I was born as, Hancock. And that's obviously English. That comes from his orphan dad. And then on his mom's side, it's all Armstrong clan, which is Scottish and Irish. And so there's that side. It's my mom's side that is purported to have the Blackfoot on both her mom and dad's side. So on her dad's side, which is, you know, her last name was Reiko, which is, I think, a German name. So her dad's side has German, it has French, has Blackfoot purportedly. And on that side, the Blackfoot, the name that I was given for the Blackfoot grandmother on that side was Ida LaRue. So obviously it's a French name, LaRue. And I've tracked I did do it one time when I was like in my early 20s and just kind of exploring Blackfoot identity and stuff. I did try to do some family history research and stuff. You know, I got done that, what do you call that thing where you make your family tree and all that online, and you can tap into all the different records and stuff. Ancestry.com or something like that. I bought a little membership to that for half a year or something and did a bunch of searches. And I could find them in Chicago. Ida LaRue, she married a LaFrance. And LaFrance is a name that's up here at Siksika, but I don't think it has a connection to me because, I mean, even though I'm from a LaFrance, it just means the Frenchman or whatever. So, you know, there's a lot of LaFrances all over the world, I think. That's my understanding anyway. So, but Ida LaRue was supposedly, you know, at least half Blackfoot. But I was able to dig up a picture of her, and she doesn't have any Blackfoot traits that I can see at all. So that side, on her dad's side, that connection, Blackfoot connection, could be horseshit. On her mom's side, on the other hand, which is also German and French and Blackfoot, but there the German is Jewish, German Jew. And I can't even remember the names that it was involved with there. Well, yeah, I can. Let's see. On her mom's side, Courtois. So this was the supposed Blackfoot grandmother on that side, was named Sadie Courtois, or also went by Sarah Curtis, kind of Anglicized it. And again, I could trace her back to Chicago residency. And the story from the family is that she was Blackfoot and in a residential school, graduated the residential school, and then started teaching at the residential school, married a Frenchman and left. And so I looked for Curtis girls or Courtois girls all over the residential schools here. And I found Curtis girls who were listed as Begunny from the Canada side, which also jives with what my family said, because they said that they were from Canada. And it's also weird to come up with, you know, Blackfoot as the tribal association for a mythical Indian grandma. They typically like, you know, Cherokee or Choctaw or whatever, you know, not Blackfoot. But any case, I did find Curtis girls, but I didn't find a Sarah or a Sadie in the listings. And they were in St. Peter's Residential School in Montana. But they were girls from the Canada Begunny band. And the dates and all of that kind of jived with the move to Chicago in the 20s and stuff. So I don't know. I don't think that story is horseshit though. And I've never like been genetically tested or anything. But if somebody wanted to, like, somebody that was you know, on my case about being a pretending and want to pay for me to get tested, I'll get tested. But I don't really have a particular interest in doing that myself, because it's just going to come out with what percent of, you know, native traits do I have. I know that most of my traits fall along the German and Scottish kind of sides, when I look at myself and compare myself to my broad family, I have those traits, more German and Scottish kind of phenotype, you know, appearance. However, my mom, all of her siblings, her parents, and my brother all have some physical traits that are absolutely Native American, right? They got shovel-shaped incisors and such, that's only Native American. So, and for the most part, most of them have just straight black hair. And so, like, I know that it's not horse shit. If I got genetically tested, there's something in there, but I know that I have relatively few phenotype Native qualities, right? And I wouldn't have said during my first life, so to speak, my age, birth to maybe 23 or somewhere around there, 22, 23. In that time, I would have never said that. I would never like really claim to be Blackfoot. I would have claimed to be like part Blackfoot or whatever. I'd have said, like the Native grandma story, but like in the same way that I wouldn't claim to be Scottish or Irish, really. Like, I had the good fortune while working for Red Crow College on the Blood Reserve and being involved in repatriations, I had the good fortune to do a collaborative project with Oxford University and the University of Aberdeen, Scotland. And so I got to travel to the homelands, so to speak, the white people homelands. Look, there's a couple of deer crossing the tracks. I wonder how often the deer get hit here. We're going toward the high level bridge along the Canadian Pacific Railway tracks here. Yeah, I had the good fortune to go there. It is the white people homeland. I kind of feel like every white person who's been born and raised in North America should go over there just for a visit to see, what the authentic white people are like. Because we're not really like them, hey? As much as it would be like if an African American went to Africa and went for a visit there. Like, when I was in Scotland, I did not feel I had any claim to say, well, I'm Scottish, or whatever. I think that would have been ridiculous. And it came down to why would I not be able to really claim that identity, even though I have that heritage genetically. I wouldn't claim that identity because it requires you actually living there and being there and having lived there a long time, and genetics is part of it, but that's definitely not all of it. And that's what's, I think really interesting about the series of questions that was proposed, like, who is really Scottish, because I think they just get a kick out of people coming there and wanting to know their Scottish family clan history and that kind of shit. Like, they do. They serve that tourist industry for sure. But I think they just mock it and laugh at it, really, in reality, I don't know. But I definitely didn't feel comfortable saying, I am of you, when I was there. I'm just a visitor here, and I got to see like really cool stuff. Like, I visited several castles, saw royal jewels, and I went to a bunch of different stone circles and stuff. And what I, myself and my ex-wife and my good friend and in-law, the late Narcissus Blood, we got to see, with our own eyes and stuff, that the old culture of the British Isles was also celebrating the sun, moon, and morning star. We went to stone circles that were absolutely representations of the sun, moon, and morning star, just like Majorville, Cairn up here. When you look at the crown jewels, the king's crown is obviously a sun, and the queen's tiara is obviously a moon, a crescent, you know. And they even wore like weasel skins and stuff on their robes. And I mean, it's very, very, there's some similarities to here in the old culture out there, the pre-Christianized culture, that I think is cool to consider. But anyway, that's just a kind of a tangent. But I think, you know, my first life, I was American, you know. And I'm going to go into detail about that in my memoirs, you know. But I was definitely 100%, you know, brainwashed American nationalist, very proud. Actually, when, you know, going to school, I would salute the flag on my way into school, military style. I was that gay. I was that gay for the USA. Yeah, I was American. I think in my second life, then I kind of came into the Blackfoot world, and I'm more comfortable saying that culturally, at least, at this point, you know, into my third life, I'm more culturally Blackfoot than anything else. Or at least I'm so heavily invested in that I don't really feel like I identify with any other group, you know? And I don't really socialize and hang out with, you know, I've got a couple of white friends, but really, like, I could think of two off the top of my head that I actually hang out with and stuff, you know. But like most of the people that I associate with are Blackfoot and have been for 3 decades now, you know, well, more than half of my lifetime. So I don't know. I'll tell you some things. Check it out. This is where it transitions into the high level bridge, but you can see they have, I don't know if you can read that, but it says, so life is worth living, and there's hotlines and stuff there to call if you're feeling like you're wanting to take your life, because every year here there certainly are people who dive off of this bridge, and it is a fatal one. You're not going to survive a jump off this bridge. Anyway, let me get into a couple of, like, some traditional knowledge around identity. Blackfoot traditional knowledge around identity stuff. This area in here, I sometimes collect stinging nettle. And I'm a little bit curious whether it's coming up now, and because it's one of the greens that are really highly nutritional to collect. I don't even see old stalks, which is weird. There used to be a really good patch growing in here. Maybe it didn't succeed last year. Oh wait, I think under the bridge I see a patch. Yeah, nettle. Yes. All right. It's getting right to where it's good harvest length. You want to get it before it goes anywhere near going to seed if you're going to eat the greens. So I need to grab gloves and come out here maybe later this week and harvest a bunch of that stuff. Yeah, I forgot to mention in my stories in my memoir the other day, like, part of what attracted my dad to my mom when they met in high school was that my mom had features that he thought of as Hispanic, okay, but like Latin American, okay, because he was all in love with Linda Ronstadt, and he thought my mom, kind of had that Latina look about her. And then my mom on her side thought my dad looked like Paul McCartney, and my dad actually was playing in a rock band, in a garage band at that time, so, and she was in love with Paul McCartney. So that's part of their attraction story. But yeah, so some of the things that I've been taught in Blackfoot traditional teachings about identity stuff, hey? I mean, yeah. Alan used to tell me this is something that his grandmother taught him. And this is something of I'll just throw it out there as almost like a koan, it's something to think about in a way. But his grandma told him, when you see someone way in the distance, coming over the hill or whatever, way in the distance, see, oh, mamatapi. There's there's somebody out there. It's a being out there. Oh, mamatapi. And then as they come closer, you'll be able to pick out maybe something about their clothing or the way that they carry themselves, something that they're some of their physical culture, things that they have on their person and stuff. You'll be able to see some of these things, and from those things, maybe they wear their hair in a certain way, maybe they've got face paint on or something. From these things, you might say, oh, makanekwan or kanekwan or sinakwan or siksikakwan or whatever. You give them basically a tribal identity. Hey, you can tag them with a tribal identity, or in the modern day case, like an ethnic identity. Hey, that middle ground. And then when they come close, then you recognize who it is, and you say, nah, so and so, and you know them as an individual up close. Hey, so this is something Alan's grandma told him that was important, and that he told me on more than one occasion. He wanted me to think about that. O mamatapi. O makanekwan. Na idumistai, So, all right, here's a related experience that I had. I was working at Red Crow College, and we were going to meet with these people who are archivists from different schools in Alberta. They were archivists, and they had some funding to put together a web page to explore how would archivism be done in different cultures. So they wanted to do a project where we put together a web page to show what would be the comparative in the Blackfoot world to their practice, their archivist practice, working in archives, and how they organize and curate those things that they're trying to organize to keep, and why are they, what motivates them, and all of these philosophical things and practical issues around what in Western society is called archivism. And the underlying is assumption that this is something that occurs in every culture, which it may or may not be. And we did put together a website. It was called Seeing with New Eyes. I haven't went to go look and see if it still even exists. But when they first came to meet with us, we met in this big classroom. A few of us representatives from Red Crow College, like we had I think myself, late Narcissus Blood, and one of our elders, Francis First Charger, was there, and we started having the conversation. They presented to us, what they were interested in, and I think Francis said a few things that seemed to be real, like non sequiturs that didn't relate to what the archivists had talked about really, and then they responded in a way that Francis didn't understand and actually took offense at. There was a kind of a heated moment. The morning just wasn't going well. Hey, it didn't seem like there was communication occurring, and so at lunchtime we went downstairs into the kitchen, and there's a little room down there, and with a long table in it, and it's just close quarters. So we went down into this we got our lunches from the kitchen, and then we're gonna follow this deer trail this way. Got our lunches from the kitchen, and then we went into this little room, and we all sat around this table in tight quarters and had our lunch, and we were visiting and stuff, and our conversation started happening. Stuff started to, communication started to work. And so as we wrapped the lunch up, Narcissus very wisely says, hey, let's not go back in the university classroom. Let's go into our boardroom, where we again can just sit around a nice table like this and continue our conversation, which we did. And like I said, it did end up in a collaboration where we took on the project. But it took us coming in closer quarters. There's something about physical distance that makes you socially distant. I'll give you another example. When I did my first repatriation of the beaver bundle from Harvard's Peabody Museum in 1996, when we were carrying Carol Murray carried the bundle out, and in front of her, the late Frank Weaselhead and the late Alan Pard walked and sang, and Alan led the song. And the song that he sang, I know the song, It's a victory song. And I would later learn and be transferred that song as part of the Beaver Bundle complex. I mean, I didn't just sing the whole song, by the way. I just opened it so that I could prove, I can sing that song. But I got transferred as part of the Beaver Bundle complex, and it comes from a story related to a human scalp that's in the bundle. Like all of these animals, all the different species that live around here contributed to the beaver bundle, but it included humans because we're a species too. So there's different animal pelts, bird pelts, and there's a human scalp in the bundle. And in fact, the bundle that Mahoney and I took care of has two. Hello. Yeah. It's taking a hike. Oh yeah, right on. Yeah, I just came down. I just live up at the top of the hill. So, making a video. No worries. See you. There's a ladies from the Métis Nation who was, I had led them on a walk, like I said this morning. And then in the afternoon they had somebody with traditional knowledge about plants take them around too. I was leading a bird walk, but I also talked about plants and showed them some stuff out here. But anyway, where was I? Oh yeah, the human scalp. So the story behind that is that there was a guy, I've heard his name was Sepistopok, Owl Child. And he had a dream. And in his dream, him and his male relatives went down to fight the Pitsiksinex. Or they went down to raid the Pitsiksinex, steal horses and stuff that are Shoshone. And, well, it should have been even it was pre-horse days. So I don't know what they were after. This is an old story. So I don't know what they were after, but they wanted to go after the Shoshone. And in his dream, they were successful, and so successful, and the dream was so vivid that he thought it was like, telling him, organize this and go do it. So he met with his brothers, his cousins, who are also considered brothers in all of this, and told them about his dream and got a group organized to go down there. And they were traveling at night like a war party does, and sleeping out during the day, hiding out. And when they were sleeping, some of his brothers and stuff started having dreams too, but their dreams were not good dreams. They were having vivid dreams of really terrible things happening to them when they go up to the Shoshone. So some of them start, saying, hey, we need to think about all of us are having these bad dreams. Maybe we need to call this off. And of course, Owl Child was, adamant that, no, for real, we're gonna be successful. I know it, and so he convinced them for a while, but as they kept having these kind of dreams, they eventually some of them started turning and going home. And his biological brothers stayed with him longest, but eventually even them, they would turn around to go home, and he got mad at them, told them that if they go home, they should all put on dresses and stuff like that, and they definitely weren't men. And he was going to continue on and basically give his life away in battle. Hey, that was his plan. So he continues on, and then he comes to this place where there's a storm that descends on him, and he finds kind of a cave, steep crag in some rock to climb into. And he goes into this cave, and it's pitch black in the cave. And as he feels his way around in there, all of a sudden he runs into another person. And he starts feeling the person frantically, because He doesn't know what the heck, but it's a living person. And so he doesn't know if this is an enemy or what. And that person then starts like feeling him too, you know, checking him out. And they're trying to see, you know, they're trying to use their hands to see if they can find some sign to tell each other, you know, tell who that other person is. That second level distance from Alan's grandmother's story, you know, when they're categorizing as tribal. That's what they're looking for. That's that kind of representation, but they couldn't, in the dark, in the pitch black, they couldn't tell. And then the owl child took a risk, and he put his fist up onto the cheek of the Shoshone, and he rubbed his cheek like this. And that's the sign to signal that he's a Piikani. And so then the other guy that was in the cave put his finger on Owl Child's chest and went like this, which is the sign of the Bitsiksinex, the snakes, the Shoshone. And so they were definitely enemy. But they had kind of already gotten over their initial, like, are we going to kill each other? And so as the storm died down, they came out of the cave and they continued to use sign language, which was the lingua franca of the plains. There was a plains sign language. They continued to use that sign language to talk to each other. And they found out that they both really had the same kind of story of how they'd come to be there. You know, they'd both been on groups that were going to go and raid the other, and then the groups backed out and they were left alone. And they were going to continue on and just throw themselves away in battle, and then ended up in that cave. And they realized in talking that they really weren't that different, you know? And so they devised this plan. They're like, really, we should bring our people together and show them, you know, that we're really not that different. We don't have to be enemies. And so they devised this plan whereby each of them would take a braid from the other, go home with it, and say that they had killed an enemy, and then bring their families back to that spot. And and they would meet up there, and they chose this one isolated, like, neat domo, isolated hill, as the spot that they would meet. And one group would camp on one side of the hill and the other group would camp on the other, but then they would come together. So so they did this. Each of them went home with a braid from the other guy, but like, the story didn't fly that well, because, you know, like, when Owl Child got to his camp and he had this braid and he had this story about how he killed an enemy, and he was calling down his brothers and cousins and stuff for running away, but he himself was missing a braid, you know, so they started, you know, picking on him, saying, yeah, right, it looks like you got beat up. Somebody cut off one of your braids. You probably just stole this from a dead body somewhere. They were messing with him, and he got mad, and he like pretty much insisted, no, you guys pack up and follow me, and I'll show you the enemy I killed. And so they travel, the camp travels and moves to this place, and this is in the summertime, later in the summertime. And when they get there, just like they had planned, the Shoshones were already camped on one side, and Owl Child told his clan to camp on the other side, and then him and his wife went over to the Shoshone side to present themselves. And when they got there, they were met by the whole group, but his friend who he had made was there, and his friend introduced to his people what had really happened. And he made this big gesture of saying to Owl Child that he's given him his life. So he had a lodge, a wife, kids, all of this, and Owl Child was now going to take all of that was him now. And then they with the Shoshone, Owl Child and his wife with the Shoshone went back to the Piikani camp, and Owl Child introduced to his group what had really happened, and he made the same gesture back and gave his life, his lodge and his family and everything to this Shoshone guy. And then the camped together for a time toward the end of summer and end of berry harvest season and stuff. And they camped together as long as they really could. There was a bunch of intermarriages, relationships that cropped up and stuff as a result of this. And but eventually, the summer comes to the end and you can't have the big encampments like that supported. And so you have to split up. And so the camp was starting to split and people were going to go their own ways. And the teenagers really didn't want to split up, hey? And so they kept playing. They were playing these games, and they had this gambling game. And and they got one of the last plays. There was a really close play between a Piikani boy and a Shoshone boy, and they couldn't tell who won. Hey, it was like a draw, but they weren't accepting it as a draw, and they start arguing. And this is as the adults are already moving away. These kids are still back there playing, and they start arguing, and a fight breaks out. And the Piikani kid picks up a rock and smashes the Shoshone kid in the head and kills him. And that snake man who had been Owl Child's friend, he cried over it. And in the words to the song, to that victory song that go with that scalp of that kid was, that snake man, he cried anyway. And so they went back to being enemies. And again, there's something about that physical separation that does that, hey? And so, I think traditional identity has a lot more to do with where you're at and who you're with and stuff like that than it does have to do with, our current categorization of different ethnicities and this kind of thing, hey? I think that's all stuff that has come about in the context of colonization, and it's not necessarily a good way to categorize people, and it's, in some ways it's leading to the extinction of native people, which is what some of that identity politics is meant to be. Like in the States, you have blood quantum, and you don't have to go too many degrees. You don't have to have too many intermarriages with other ethnic groups before, whether or not you're growing up entirely on the Blackfeet reservation or not, you're not considered Blackfoot anymore. You're not on the band rolls. It's crazy stuff. Yeah, eventually we're going to get into some of my history and stuff in those memoirs, but coming right down to it, I had a major identity crisis while I was in the military. I had a Gestalt experience when I was 12 years old that I'm going to tell you about that was major, that I think helped me see the world differently than a lot of people around me. And then I had a massive identity crisis when I got into the U.S. military and was working intelligence and learned that I'd been lied to and brainwashed my whole life. And I'm going to talk about all that stuff when that time comes, hey, when that memoir comes. But when I left the military, I left with two certainties in my mind. One of those certainties is that I was going to go do post-secondary education, because I did not want to be in a position ever again where I was kind of a slave to someone who was intellectually not my match. Like, this person should not be calling the decisions. I should be calling the decisions. And so that required credentials, and I went to school in Boston after that. And I excelled. Well, we're going to talk about it because I wanted to get the best of those credentials at that point. I had never thought about school really before I went into the military. From the time I was 12 years old until I graduated high school, I was absolutely certain that was going to be my career, U.S. Army Special Forces, and I lined myself up to do that, and I'm going to talk about all that stuff in due time. But I had an identity crisis, and I no longer wanted to be American. And I wasn't going to go over to Scotland or England or wherever else, Germany or wherever. I had long, you'll learn in my memoirs, I had long sought more, of an understanding of, indigenous North American cultures, and at that point I started looking at what is it to be Blackfoot in particular. And that's when I committed myself to start coming out here for that learning. And because I wanted a new identity. I was American, like I said. I was American. But I left that relationship, like a bad love affair, I left it. I found out I had been lied to the whole time. It was not what I thought it was. I had been deceived. And so I left that relationship. And I came here looking for what is it to be Blackfoot, because, I needed to choose something to try to be other than America. I didn't come here wanting to be Canadian. I did, however, ultimately have to get my citizenship here so I could stay. But I don't consider myself American anymore. I don't consider myself Canadian. I really just consider myself Blackfoot, even though many Blackfoot people would not consider me that way. Some would. Some tell me, oh, you're just part of us. And what it really is, like being Blackfoot, or being in any tribe, is you're part of a huge extended family. When I go, I'm just hearing this kingfisher down here. I don't know if you hear him in the background. When I go to Okkogatz in the Sundance, which is the big annual encampment, nobody's surprised to see me there because I am part of the community. I'm not an official member, and that has to do with the genetic stuff, and that has to do with the government interference in defining who a community member is. I mean, it's not entirely the case. Like a blood tribe membership, they say who's Blackfoot and who's not. Like, I know, for instance, Justine, who I raised, Mahoney's daughter, my daughter, Justine, she's, part Cree, part German, part Blackfoot, and but on blood tribes, enrollment papers and stuff, she's 100% Blackfoot. So that is what it is. But somebody like myself, who did not come originally, like I wasn't born to parents of this community, who were here and such, like who people know, I'm never gonna get membership. And it's the same like if I came from another tribe, I could be like my mother-in-law from Mahoney is from Hobbema, from the Cree, and she'll never get Blackfoot membership, blood tribe membership, but she is still considered to be a member of the community. And in fact, a very respected elder among the traditionalists in the community. But she'll always still be Cree. And there's going to be people always going to look at me as an outsider. And there's people that have lived here and been part of this for less time than I have. Kids in their 20s that would, flick me shit for claiming Blackfoot identity at all. But, like I said, there's different opinions and stuff. But I am a member of the community, whether I have, legal tribal membership or not. And I think everybody more or less recognizes that, although there are definitely people who would like to kick me out of the community for various issues that they have with me. But that's the way people are with any outsider. So yeah, I'm in a position in my life where I'm a bridge person, and I don't have, any identity that I can securely claim, that I feel confident in claiming, that's me, except my personal identity in a way, and my affiliation with the community, like I say. And it is just one big extended family. And I've had relationships and threads into several of those families in Het'gaina and Piikani, both through relationships, love relationships with women, and through transfers. In the Blackfoot culture, when you get transferred, you're part of a lineage. And I'm part of these lineages with the Beaver Bundle. So, yeah, I don't know if that entirely answers the question. I don't think there's a firm solution, and I think a lot of it comes down to, like, in anthropology it'd be called historical particularism. Like any group of people has their very unique histories of experience that have brought their culture to be enacted in the way it is in the present. You can't understand it easily. You have to know as much as you can about all these facets that shape the culture. And it's the same with people, I think. It comes down to each of our historical particularism in a way, like what is the history of experiences that you've had. And like I said, I'm more phenotypically, I'm genetically, obviously, British Isles. But when I went to the British Isles, I don't feel comfortable saying I'm them. I'm not. I felt comfortable claiming to be American at one time. I don't anymore. The only community that I really feel that I can claim any real like membership with at this point is the Blackfoot community, and especially Kainai, the Blood Tribe. And that's just because of my unique history of experiences, which I'm going to go through in the memoirs. So I guess that's my position on it, some of my thinking around it. It's not an easily answered question. It's about family and about relationships. There is definitely a genetic component to identity, but family, it takes in, absorbs from the outside and brings them in and makes them part of what's inside. And so, again, I feel like there's a locality factor and a socialization factor and an acculturation factor that are at least equally important as genetics, as phenotype, as what your skin looks like and stuff. But if you're born into a Blackfoot family, yeah, that's your family. So that's how it is. Anyway, I don't know what's up for tomorrow. Might be headed to the mountains, might not. If not, I'll be doing snake fence stuff. And yeah, I'll catch up later in the week. Keramatsinachboa.